Welcome, everyone. You're seeing the slides dance a little bit. I just want to thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss the value of an integrated comprehensive student journey map and how to achieve it. So let's jump right in. First, I just want to review a few housekeeping items. You do see the slides jumping a little bit. They're kind of dancing. We're not sure what's going on there. But of course, anytime you try to have any kind of virtual presentation, one thing must challenge us. So we're just going to move forward. As far as housekeeping items, to avoid distractions or background noise, we're going to have all attendees muted, so you don't have to worry about your dogs barking or that bird chirping outside your window. We'll just have you on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you're having any issues with your volume, try clicking that settings wheel and you can change your volume or change your audio device there. We're hoping to conjure up some ideas. So at the end of the webinar, we should have some time for Q&A. Please use the chat function in the LiveStorm webinar to ask your question, and we will get to as many as we can. And if we don't get to your question, we will definitely address it via email after the webinar. All right, let's get started. So today we're going to discuss the value of the student journey mapping across your student population and how technology can help you get the most out of this process at scale. We'll also cover some key tips and strategies for evaluating a new CRM for your institution and overcoming obstacles to implementation. So let's dive right in. I just want to briefly introduce everyone to kick it off. My name is Lauren Ellison. I'm a key accounts executive at Lead Squared, and I specialize in the education industry. Joining me today are two incredible industry leaders, Maggie Zaman, Director of Admissions and Marketing at California Career Institute, and Eddie Cook, the Corporate Director of Admissions at Asher College. Maggie, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I just want to say, again, thank you for having me on this webinar. I'm really excited to be part of it. And again, grateful for the opportunity to really talk a little bit more about what this experience has been for California Career Institute for myself. And so it gives me great pleasure to really be on today's webinar. So I have about 25 years of experience in admissions, marketing, as well community outreach. I started probably at a really younger age, and it was really all due as a result of a contact that I made with the CEO at a specific institute. And so he approached me one day and he said, "Hey, I think you would be great in admissions." And before I knew it, that's how my career got started 25 years later. I have had the opportunity to work at a number of different institutes, changing students' lives, but primarily the larger part of my time was at International Education Corporation, Career Education Corporation, and then most recently, California Career Institute, which really has become my home. And what got me started as well in admissions and wanting to pursue this was the fact that when I was younger, I wanted to really change the world. And so I remember that my passion really for wanting to make a difference was really so strong that I wanted to go into a convent, but my parents said, absolutely not. That's not something that you're going to do. And so I felt a little disappointed, but again, deep inside, I still had this desire to make a difference. So that took me into admissions. And then some years later, I decided to do 5 years of missionary work where literally I slept on the floor, knocked on doors. I traveled throughout Europe, Mexico, and different countries, all of the United States, several states as well, doing what it is that I do. So my passion for making a difference and pursuing, again, further work in the field of admissions is truly one that's very close to my heart. So I just wanted to share again where this passion comes from.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. And Eddie.
Of course. Well, that's a hard role to follow there, Maggie. Maybe I should have went first. So my name is Eddie Cook. I'm the Corporate Director of Admissions here at Asher College. I've been in higher education now for about 9 years, coming up on 10, and it still feels like yesterday that I got into it. And part of the reason I think that is because you never run into the same thing ever in higher education, and the sector is always evolving, and I absolutely love it. Prior to that, I worked in the healthcare field for about 12 years. I worked for the largest online health insurance broker in the United States. I did sales training over there. And I literally fell into admissions. I went to an open interview and I had no idea what admissions was. I knew nothing about what it is, and they took a gamble on me, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the outcomes, and I fell in love with the students, and really working for a higher purpose efficiently really, really, really makes my day. So on a daily basis, I can go home and say, you know, I really did change a life. I know that's a cliche thing people talk about all the time, but honestly, we really work together, and I think that that's everyone in the room kind of feels the same way. That's why they're in education.
That is fantastic. You both have an incredibly deep background in education and admission, so I'm really excited to hear your insights today. All right. So, as we all know, today's student population is very diverse, right? There are a few ways to look at this variety of students knocking literally or figuratively at the door of educational institutions today. We can look at it by generations. We have the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, or sometimes called the Zoomers. We have geography, so the US, international, could be in state, out of state, on campus, online, or maybe a hybrid option, or via demographics, so race, ethnicity, language, income level, employment status, military affiliation. There are so many buckets that we can look at the new student population. So considering the numerous factors that we can be used to identify and characterize these individual students or student cohorts, it's foolish to think that a singular student journey is going to fit all student situations. So Maggie, can you tell us a little bit about the student population at California Career Institute?
Certainly. So our journey really started in us assessing our data and taking a deeper dive into our identity. And we did that by first reviewing the last 3 years of graduates, where they're coming from, learning more about their backgrounds. And when I mention backgrounds, it's really at every level possible. Um, I personally like to connect to the stories behind each and every one of the students. That really helps us to decipher the model of who our student is. And so in doing that, we found ourselves at really the heart point of our strategic enrollment management plan. And that's what really got us thinking about it in a more diverse manner, and looking at our data and really deciding where it made more sense for us to be, and understanding our student population. So our student population is very diverse, and they do come from many parts of the world, many walks of life. Some are military, some are high school students, some are adult learners, some are career changers, but overall, they're all exploring. And so as we came together in putting together this enrollment management plan, we also took a look at our services, from admissions to financial aid, to academics, and what that student experience looked like and what that journey was like. But we also started with the first part of it, which is really when the inquiry comes in. How do we make that connection from the ads to how do we in admissions connect with those prospective students, and how do we engage them, and how do we nurture that relationship, and how do we evolve with them as they're also evolving as professionals. And so when we came across LeadSquare, it allowed us to really merge our plan, our thoughts, our ideas with the different touch points, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. But we literally had to take a look at also our primary market, and then also our secondary market. And with that, we understood a couple of things, and that's that we were really more working for more of a transactional type of service, where the student would call us, and we would move them to an interview, then we would move them to the next steps, whether it's entrance exam enrollment, and here's your orientation date. So for us, it was really key to make it a little bit more of a high touch, human touch type of approach. And so through Lead Square, integrating that process into our strategic enrollment management plan, we were able to really bring that to life and give it birth and really enrich our conversions and many of the different strategies that help us with connecting with that student and within real time. So we identified that to be our strength, but also our weakness, and that we weren't really having that strong connection that's needed. And so what we are doing now is we're working on a lot more within our institution to, again, strengthen all of these different areas of our process, continue to do more work and more development within our primary secondary market. We also identified that a lot of students go back and forth, and I'm sure a lot of institutions experience that from time to time. Students will come to your school, then they'll go to the community college, then they might go from the community college back to your school. And so ensuring that also we're working on articulation agreements, we're working on having a stronger presence within the high schools, within the local community colleges, building and forging those relationships with the local veteran administration office, local vet offices has been also really instrumental. It is a lot of groundbreaking work that has to happen, sometimes literally overnight, but we do have this plan that we put together that really spans over the next 5 years that allows us to take it in steps, take it in parts, because what is most critical at the end is really forging those relationships, really helping to connect with students and making it a memorable experience, a story that not only we can sort of remember, but more importantly, the student can remember as they look back at their college experience and they look at what it was like for them to attend California Career Institute and how we were able to make a difference because we understood the different phases of our student model and how we incorporated that into Lead Square.
Perfect. Oh, excuse me. Thank you so much. Eddie,
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit about the student population at Asher College?
Of course, yeah. So there really is no, quote, quote, student population, I guess you could say, as far as like certain demographic. I mean, we here at Asher College, probably with most vocational schools across the industry, we have students as young as 17, and I've personally enrolled students up to 76 years old, and they've been successful. So I'm sure you could have seen the face of my career services director when I enrolled someone who was 76 years old. But she was the most dedicated student I'd ever seen in my life. So thank you, Barbara. Shout out to her. But you know, the student, I've had school owners tell me, and I've had people tell me that the student never changes, right? The journey never changes, and that could have possibly been the fact right up until COVID is the thing. We here at Asher College, we're lucky enough to have campuses across the Southwest U.S. We have campuses in California, Nevada, and Texas, and what's very different is the approach on how you have to approach students. Okay, the approach is different. The student in Nevada is not the student that's in Dallas, Texas, and the student in Dallas, Texas is not the student that's in Sacramento. And to have a closed-minded approach and just say that you can just have a one lane focus to this is how we acquire students is not going to be successful for you. You have to be able to be diverse. You have to be able to speak their language. You have to meet them where they're at. And one of the things throughout COVID is so many schools have flipped to a online or hybrid learning profile where this is how we teach, this is how we provide education, that it's slowly taking away what's special from each individual school because they're starting to all offer incredibly similar things. And a big difference that I see that schools are successful is A, the culture that's in the school, B, the software that they use while they're at the educational institution, and B, or C, the recruitment and marketing software. And I think that that's a huge part of how you get a hold of the student and you meet them where they're at. Maggie said it's great because it's not a transactional thing anymore. You have to listen, you have to meet the student where they're at, you have to understand that roadblocks happen. You have to understand that at any given moment, somebody might be thrust away from the workforce, they might have to work from home, or their child may have to be quarantined for a certain amount of times. You just don't know. And it's up to us to provide the technology to meet them where they're at.
Thank you both. And I love that shout out to Barbara. What a cool achievement for your
Yeah.
mid 70s. Congrats. Um, so this truly is not a one size fits all process, right? When we're talking about student journey mapping, and I know both of you touched on that a little bit already, but we're going to dive a little deeper when we take a look at our next slide. So it's really easy to think of a student journey as having a distinct and finite beginning and end, perhaps starting with the first inquiry and then ending at graduation. But I challenge you to think of the student journey not as a finite linear path, but more of as a cycle. Think of your students as members of your educational family. They may engage with you initially for a course, a certificate, or a degree program, but their story's not going to end there. And with a positive experience, they're more likely to return when the need arises again for continued education. Eddie, do you see this happening at your institution with returning students? And how do you incorporate this into your student journey mapping process?
Oh man, this is my favorite slide in here. This is absolutely my favorite because there's no beginning and end of a student journey. You know, Gandhi, he was most favoritely quoted as saying that education is the one thing that no one can ever take away from you. And unfortunately, our demographic of student that traditionally comes from us has not been successful in the traditional college sector, right? So they come to us and they come to us a little broken. Sometimes they come to us a little unsure and not trustworthy. And that's kind of where it begins. It begins with the inquiry and it begins with the very first touch. And whether that's a text message that we send out to them, whether that's a phone call that we generate out to them, that very first touch is so very important. One of the things that I really like about Lead Squared and what it's allowed us to do is it's allowed to automate the process throughout the student's journey. And what I mean by that is, I mean, yeah, it's great that a student signs up for school, but remember, we're not enrolling students to sign for school. We're enrolling students to graduate and get a job and get a career. And one of the things that I like about this slide that I don't see is the referral aspect behind this. By leveraging technology and by leveraging automation like Lead Squared, what you have is you have the ability to free your reps up, to free your admissions people up, to free up the people that has bonded with the students the most, that have convinced them to come here and that has, you know, hey, we got your back, we're going to do this together. By leveraging the automation within Lead Squared, you can help them through the enrollment process, through the course progression, through the bumps and bruises that they're going to have along the way. Some of my greatest students and some of my greatest stories that I have of my students are students who came to me and said, Eddie, I don't think I can do this anymore. And the reason they did that is by consistent touch points throughout the program. Enrolling a student and then when they start school, closing your door and moving on to the next one is not the way to enroll for graduates. You know, I think people can tell you that left and right all the time. You have to build a relationship with the students. And part of the way you do that is with consistent communication. You want to email the students, you want to text message the students, you want to call the students. And I know that that's tough, but when you can utilize automation through the power of a good CRM, all of that can be done on the back end while your reps are still focusing on the newest, latest business. Because at the end of the day, one thing I tell people all the time is that the best, most successful business you have in your company and at the biggest opportunity for your school is going to be in referrals. And by doing that, you have to build the trust. And I think that that's where this slide is just, it's so powerful because from I mean, from the beginning of stories to graduation to, hey, this is my son. I've had entire families, like 3 generations of people come through school. And it's absolutely amazing to see them be successful.
That's fantastic. We love when happy people tell their friends how happy they are, right? Um, Maggie, how do you adjust your student outreach and engagement with a more continuous cycle mindset?
Sure. I was just, again, listening to what Eddie shared, and it's pretty much in alignment with what our approach here is as well at California Career Institute. But I have to say that now having Lead Square in place, it's allowed us to really look at the raw data and assess, as I had shared earlier, where students are coming from and what's that journey like and how are they progressing. So it is part of our continuous improvement plan that every institution institution is part of, every department is part of, what we're continuously assessing our processes and then making adjustments along the way so that we can continue to see those improvements that at the end will be part of the persistence that's so important of that student journey and the graduation, because really that is the end goal, to see our students through that and then successfully working in the field of study. So for us also, it was taking a step back and looking at our key areas. It was important to really establish that specific culture, huddle around, again, what this program can do for you, huddle around your strategic enrollment plan. And then also it really comes down to as well having the right leadership in place that can continue to cast that vision out, that can continue to support that mission as well. And what we found as a result of the data and having these services in place is, I think there's one key point that Eddie brought up earlier in our conversation, and that's the fact that organic change happened to many institutions. And so by organic change, I'm thinking more of when COVID hit us. When COVID hit us, we all had to sort of very quickly respond and react to what that learning experience would look like. And so we took a deep dive into our processes, and many institutions opted to do Zoom, as so did we. But I think what this journey has taught us is that we have to really enhance the tools and the way in which we deliver that educational experience. And so Lead Square, having the student portal, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit, implementing all these different key points has really helped us to strengthen the level of technology, the innovation that we're using to connect with our student from today. And so the third part that I didn't mention, it was establishing the culture, it was making sure we had the right leadership in place, but it was also remaining innovative. And so innovative became really key for us. Thus, it gave birth to Lead Square. And that really is the outcome of our CEO, Dr. Rafad, and Mohammed, who is our Director of Career Corporate Development, that really helped to decide that this was a really good tool for us. And so what we also understood as a result of this entire continuous improvement experience is that we then had to move from organic change, which is what COVID created for us as an institution, to more of a specific purpose, change with purpose, that allowed us to then say, okay, what do we need to really strengthen as a student experience? It became more of an intentional change. So as an intentional change, we opted to focus a little bit more on, again, this journey, but then we also focused on the higher quality of the education. We focused on more shifting, which is something that we were already doing, but more focused on STEM type programs. And that's something that we're currently studying more. We do specialize in healthcare, but then also part of that journey took us into really focusing more on how do we prepare our students for college. And so I think a lot of institutions that are on with me right now will probably agree that that is one of the biggest challenges. And so it's not only the cultivation of that inquiry, how do we connect with them, how do we take them through this entire journey like Eddie shared earlier, but it's how are we preparing them. So one of the things that we're exploring is the use of YouTube. We see a lot of people go onto YouTube to learn very complex topics. And so I'm one of them. If I need to learn how to fix my car, for example, I'll go onto YouTube, and we find a lot of people going onto YouTube. So that's a challenge that I'll cast out to everyone that's part of today's webinar, is what are you doing to connect with your students to better prepare them? And so I have found that YouTube is really a good way to really encourage them and connect with today's students. So I just wanted to add that. I know it's a little further more than what was asked, but I think that I got excited about what Eddie shared. So I wanted to give my thoughts on that too.
I love it. Thank you. And I really like how you both touched upon the fact that automating the student journey allowed you to focus more on building relationships with your students, preparing them for class, And technology does such a great job of taking some of those manual administrative tasks off your hands so you can really focus on what's important. I'd like to hear a little bit about how you both handled this type of journey across multiple student types prior to leveraging a tool like Lead Squared, and what were some of the challenges associated with that. And Eddie, I'd love to hear from you first.
Wow, pre-lead squared. Okay, that goes back. I was probably 40 pounds lighter. I had hair. Um, Luckily, Asher College was one of the first educational institutions in the US to actually adopt Lead Squared. And I remember the journey. We had a homegrown CRM that had worked. It worked well. It wasn't great, but it worked well. And it worked well for the size of the school that we were. Um, we started to grow, and we realized very quickly that there was a need to make our admissions advisors a lot more efficient. And I think that that's the key with Lead Squared, is making your people more efficient. I think that that's like a big part of it. um, Prior to Lead Squared, text messages, we had to do it through Google Voice. So we leveraged all the free software we could to text people. We manually dialed, through an actual phone on our desk, which was slow and kind of clunky. Um, and we effectively worked from lists, where we knew what bucket they were in. So we knew what students we hadn't contacted, what students we contacted, what students we interviewed. And then that was it. It was up to the admissions advisor to sift through the data to understand who to call next. And I think that that's where probably the biggest area of opportunity with Lead Squared is that Lead Squared helped us with that. It helped take away the thought process of the rep to say, hey, look, who do I call next? By automating that and saying, hey, look, this is the next person you want to reach out to. This is the next person you want to reach out to. Or don't forget to follow up with this person. Um, our journey with Lean Squared has been a long one. We started the implementation process in late 2018, and I believe we rolled out in 2019, just prior to COVID. And it was amazing. The stuff that is integrated with Lead Squared, like the converse texting, is all included within the CRM. The calling is done within the CRM. And from a management standpoint, from a compliance standpoint, it's really easy to monitor what your reps are doing and to get in front of the trends. I think that that's a huge thing when you talk about what data you have, because anybody could look at lead to enrolled, interview to appointment show. That's great. Anybody could look at that. But the problem is that you identify a trend down sooner and you can coach a lot quicker. One of the really great things that Lead Squared has done with us is it's also implemented with some of our other partners that we've used before in the past. We've partnered with Enrollment Resources, and Lead Squared was able to API and bring the information in right away. We've partnered recently to get a dialer through the Art of Admissions to auto dial some of our students through a predictive dialer, and Lead Squared has jumped up, and that has maximized my reps like I've never seen before. We have actually had moments in the past with Lead Squared where we've had to go back because a student will say, oh, well, your rep told me this, or I was text messaged this, and we can jump in and we can solve the issue right there. It's not just an admissions tool. We actually use it for our financial aid as well, which is really great. So our financial aid advisors also leverage this because the journey doesn't just start in admissions. It continues through the financial aid process. And unless you could get that student packaged, the student's not going to enroll in school. So why wouldn't you use some of the automation? So like I said, it's been a long one with Lead Squared. One thing that I can tell you is that they've always been incredibly helpful in whatever you need. We looked at a variety of different people, different CRMs. We looked at HubSpot, we looked at Orban, we looked at Verity, we looked at Salesforce. And at the end of the day, we came back because of the customization and because of the customer service side that Lead Squared has. It just does what we need it to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eddie. I love the way you describe, the journey spans departments, and that Lead Squared allows you to take advantage of connecting all of those departments as well. Maggie, how did you handle this type of journey prior to leveraging Lead Squared?
Sure. I was just, again, like Eddie, I was just thinking about what my world was like before. Prior to partnering with Lead Square, we really worked from Excel spreadsheets. And so it reminded me a little bit of sort of the old way of maybe managing our book of business in the admissions recruitment office. We also only worked with Orban. And so Orban, is more of a program that is utilized at the management level, because you can access a lot of reporting. And even at that, sometimes we felt that it was still a little limited, where we wanted to study more of our speed to lead information, which is something, for example, that Lead Square can give you. Literally, we're able to dissect our data and look at how long has it been from when that inquiry came in to when the interview took place to when the enrollment took place, and vice versa. And I love the fact that I can also customize certain reports to then generate the information that I'm in need of, or that my CEO is in need of. And one of the things that we do at our school is we really do look at our data on a regular basis. And so for me, it's really important that I'm able to, within real time, produce that information that's needed on my part to be able to determine, forecast, plan accordingly, to be able to identify areas of opportunity or areas where we're really performing well as a department, and that I'm also able to cascade that down to the different partners that we work with, and also within my own department. So prior to Lead Square, I was very limited in that regard. One of the things that I also enjoy doing is I enjoy doing a lot of retargeted marketing. And so working from the Excel spreadsheet meant me perhaps doing more of the blind copying on a generic email. And so now that I have Lead Square, I'm able to utilize some of the templates there. I have customized email templates that are ready to go. I don't have to recreate them each and every single time. And I'm able to connect them to the group of students that I would like to manage to for that given campaign. And in addition to that, I'm able to see data. How many students interacted with that email, opened that email, took that next step to click on certain specific links that I may have put in there. But also I'm able to see how many students went from that email to now taking the next step. And so that's something that Lead Square has allowed me to have greater visibility. I felt like before I was operating a little bit from a place of maybe in the dark, where I didn't quite have all the answers that I needed. And so I could always make assumptions. I could always maybe guesstimate certain data points. But now I have my data points and I'm able to really work from that. But I have seen an improvement in our conversions when I do retargeted email campaigns, which Lead Square has integrated into our program. I also do a lot of text messaging, as Eddie shared. I do appointment confirmations that are automated. So there's a lot of steps that are automated within our processes. I also do a lot of automation when it comes to scheduling different activities, whether it's a campus tour. We all know that how important that is. That's something that is basically a way that you can connect with students, which is really free to some degree because they're coming in and they're touring your facility. So I'm able to get that message out within real time to our students and invite them to come into campus tours. I'm able to gather that information and then take it to the next level, get them scheduled in our system. And I'm also able to use other features of like social media integration that is in Lead Square. And with Orban, I wasn't able to do the social media integration, the retargeted email campaigns. I wasn't really able to look at my data in the way that I'm looking at it now. So there are all these pieces that are part of the continuous improvement plan, that are part of our enrollment management plan. And so it allows me to integrate all these pieces into this program. and use more of a holistic approach in the way that we really connect with students and involve all the different departments, because I'm also able to run reports. One of the main reasons why we also went with Lead Square is our CEO, Dr. Rafat. He really wanted to ensure that he would have access to data. And so we were a little limited with Orban, and he wanted to know really beyond, again, what we could see is really the different touch points of the student journey. And so now we're able to look at how many interviews, how many students are have started school, for example, because I put that into our Lead Square program. But we're able to look more at the conversions, as I had shared earlier, the speed to lead, even our book of business. What does it look like for today? Who's coming in at what time, what programs, what lead source? All that's important, because that's also information that I need to then relay back to our marketing partners. Like Eddie said, we also partnered with Niche. We partnered with One Partners marketing firm. And so it's a continuous assessment of how are they performing? How is this partnership working? Where can we tweak the campaign? So our institute having access to this information is really critical in being able to move that needle, so to speak. So it's been extremely, extremely insightful. I don't see my world without Lead Square at this point.
That's so powerful how you're using the data to glean those actionable insights and then interact with your student on the journey and kind of guide them on that path. That's very cool. And I think that's a really great segue into our next topic about what student journey maps can tell us. So they provide a meaningful snapshot into the way students are interacting with your institution, right? They can highlight things like student entry and exit points, frequency, nature, and effectiveness of various touch points that you may be having, marketing touch points, just like Maggie mentioned, what's working or not working in your admissions and marketing strategy, what risk points may be lying within your student's journey that could derail their success, key insights you can help that can help you forecast and plan for enrollment targets or student engagement initiatives. And the journey can tell you so much more. Maggie, can you tell us a little bit about, and I know you've touched on this a little bit, but what do you find most valuable from the student journey mapping, and how are you using it to influence your admissions and marketing strategies?
Aside from the access to the data points in real time, and being able to connect with our students, I think it's the capability that we have as leaders within our respective departments and prospective institutions to design a program as we envision it. And I'll give you a quick example of that. There is quite a bit of automation that we have built into our program with Lead Square at our school. To this day, I still receive text messages from students that inquire about our program and then automatically receive a text message, a form of communication from us to let them know that, hey, I understand you reached out, you're interested in learning more about ABC program. We'd love to help you. And like to go ahead and set up a campus tour with you. And so it's sort of a general message, but what it does do is I often hear from our students how they feel that it's someone that's live, someone that's there, that's genuinely having a conversation with them. I am able to also have Lead Square on my phone, which is a feature I didn't talk about earlier, but I love this capability because I'm able to on the go, or if I'm away from the office, I'm also able to access remote control to the program. I'm able to look at my activities scheduled for that day, contacts with students, so that if they are reaching out, and then I can get that message in real time and I'm able to respond back to them. And so also in that way, I'm able to ensure that I'm connecting with them when they're available. Our students aren't always going to be available in the morning time. I'm finding at our school, at least, they tend to be more available, as I think the experience is for many institutions, between 4 and 8 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes do I get messages after that time? I certainly do. That's totally up to me if I'd like to go ahead and follow through on responding to those students. But what I do find is it allows me to have greater visibility to make that connection even a stronger one, a genuine one. And I think that that is what's key. Eddie also talked about this earlier today. It's although it is an automated system, although it is a software, a program that we're working from, Lead Square has allowed us to really design it as we feel fit based on our institutional needs, based on the way that I envision this journey. And so I've added a lot of automation. I've added a lot of human touch to it. I've added a lot of components that allow me to connect with students, as I mentioned earlier, when it matters the most, when they're making a decision to decide whether this is a good fit for them or not. And I also have done it in such a way that it's not just happening within admissions, but it's happening through financial aid once they're in the classroom, once they're deep into their program. And part of what we say at California Career Institute is that we're going to be there for you every step of the way. And for us, we really do take that to heart. We really want to be there. We want to be there with them once they start school, and Lead Square allows us to do that. We want to be there for them once they graduate. And when they graduate, we graduate. I think through Lead Square, we're able to have those conversations and make sure that they know that we're still part of their journey and that we're here for them. We're, celebrating that moment, and we're there for them once they land their job as well. So to that degree, what we say is what we're doing, and Lead Square really allows us to really follow through on a lot of those aspects, because humanly, it might not necessarily be always possible if it weren't for the help of Lead Square. We're a small institute, and so we're a small group of admissions members. And so having Lead Square allows us to really multiply the abilities that we have to reach a wider number of students, a larger number, a larger territory. And so I feel that that is one of the biggest benefits that Lead Square has brought to our institute.
I love that. I love how you explained how automation has really allowed you to reach out in a personalized way to a larger population than you would have been able to before. And Eddie, I would love it if you could speak to a little bit about what you found the most valuable as far as student journey mapping. But then also, we've been throwing around this term automation a lot. Can you touch on what that means to your institution and how it relates to student journey mapping?
Yeah, of course. I think the term automation is thrown around a lot when you talk to CRMs, right? When you talk to CRMs, when you talk to anybody, you always hear this term automation, and nobody really defines what automation is in its simplest terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some examples on how we've utilized automation, because for a lot of people who have never used a system that has automation features, when we say that, you go, okay, cool, automation. What exactly is that? So effectively, what automation is the best way to think about it is like a row of dominoes, right? You have 30 dominoes, and the very first domino is the student inquiry, right? And they flip that first domino, that's the first action. And then because of that first action, the automation, the software flips over the rest of the dominoes and it does everything for you. Maggie actually touched on instantaneous speed to lead, okay? One of the most important things you could do when a student asks for information is to let them know that you have it right away. And uh, there's a text message actually that is sent out from Lead Squared that we have actually programmed along the way with these touch points of automations so that it doesn't require a rep to do anything. We don't have a huge team of admissions people. We have 3 admissions people here in Sacramento, and our speed to lead is about 48 to 60 seconds from time of inquiry to getting someone on the phone. And the idea of that is it's to maximize the effectiveness of not letting them put their phone down. One of the great marketing reports that we looked at, Maggie touched on this earlier when she talked about open rates and things like that, is staggering number. It's like 93.5% of people request information on their cell phones versus a desktop computer. Why wouldn't you text message what they're asking for information on right away? And you could let them know, hey, this is Eddie Cook. I'm your admissions advisor with Asher College. I'm going to be reaching out to you in just a few moments. Be ready to answer the phone. And then boom, the phone rings right away. The thing about it is that nowadays with cell phones, if somebody sees a phone number that they don't know, the chances of them picking it up are slim to none. Okay, it's very slim to none. You could all take a look at your cell phone and say if your phone rang right now, you would probably silence it and let it go to voicemail. But if someone text messaged you, it's much easier just to take a second and briefly look down at the text message than it is to pick up a phone. And that is where you're leveraging some automation. More automation is going to be in the reporting aspect of things. When you move a student from attempted to contacted over to contacted, it puts them into a different bucket. So now we are marketing to them differently. We're sending a different string of emails to them. We're sending a different string of text messages to them. We're calling them at different times of the day. And we're using different scripting for someone who's contacted versus someone who has never been contacted. And the same thing with interviewed. And I think that automation, that term automation, I think that's probably the best description of kind of what it is, without getting too deep into it. Just think of it like a bunch of dominoes. Um, One of the ways that we have really utilized this, when you talk about the student journey, right? You see icons on here. You see entry and exit points, student touch points, metrics, things along these lines. These are all things that any director of admissions or any campus CEO should really honestly pay attention to, because this is the income, this is the lifeblood of the school. It's how it actually starts. And one of the things that Lead Squared has allowed us to do is maximize the efficiency of the reps we have. Like I said, we have 3 reps. Yesterday, my 3 reps made 590 phone calls and they talked to 89 people. And the 3 of them combined were only on the phone 3 hours and 46 minutes. So when you talk about connections, you talk about making phone calls, you talk about actually getting people on the phone. That is tough to do in a manual dialing situation, right? And Lead Squared allows us just to connect with more people. And the moment that you connect with more people, you can understand more people's stories. You can understand what's driving them, why they want to go to school. And you could really let your admissions people do what they're here for. And it's to listen and understand the why about why they're going to school, rather than bogging them down with administrative work on the back end.
That's great. I love the domino analogy, and each student journey could have their own set of dominoes, right? Setting off that different automation, guiding them along the journey. The journey mapping does such a great job of providing insight into what's important to students, how they like to engage with the college or school, and where they may be hung up. However, it can definitely be a complicated and manual process. As our student populations become more diverse and complex, it can feel very daunting to map out all of these student journeys so that you can gain the most benefit. But personalization is really needed if institutions are going to succeed, especially as we're seeing declining enrollments in post-secondary education. So solutions like Lead Squared have risen as technology partners and leaders, supporting educational institutions of all sizes, like all of you, enabling you all to provide true personalization at scale, as Maggie and Eddie have both mentioned. So technology can help you with mapping each student touch point, like we talked about, achieving faster response times. Eddie's team, an incredible less than 1 minute speed to lead, leading to better engagement, integrating with the existing systems, or possibly consolidating a lot of your systems into one solution for that more comprehensive and seamless view. It can also improve the student experience through a personalized student portal, which we're going to touch on in a second. You can gain clear and actionable insights and make decisions, data-driven decisions through those reporting tools. And it can support growth and scalability. And technology can do so much more than that as well. I do want to hand it over to Maggie. We have some really great images of California Career Institute's student portal on the screen. Maggie, can you take us through what we're seeing and how a custom portal has impacted your admissions process?
Certainly. So for us, it was really there was a lot of collaboration. It was truly a team effort between Lead Square and our institute. I have to say that that's one of the differences that I personally found in working in the past with Salesforce and having Research Slate and other CRMs. by far, the support that we have received from Lee Square has been really phenomenal. So what you have here is we took our interpretation of what we wanted that experience to be for students. So one of the areas that I feel very strong about is imagery. So we really focused on the images telling a story. And I feel that as institutes, a lot of us sometimes can struggle with that. And we tend to look at telling the story as talking about your mission statement, a slogan, for example, and that's your story, when a story is really more made up of student experiences, whether it's perseverance, persistence in their studies, whether it's someone that maybe completely paid off their tuition, and as a result of that, they're paying it forward. So what we try to do, because we're still a young institute, is we did have to resort to using more stock images. But even utilizing stock images, we wanted to make sure that they could kind of tell the story, put the student at the center of it. So we focused a lot of the content of it, and the positioning of the content. So the first page starts with student portal online application login. So students are able to register. If they click register, they set up their account. It's a very again, safe environment. And if they need to log back in, then they'll click on login. By that point, all they are needing to do is put in their email and their password, which is very really individual to that student, because they're the only ones that know what that password is. But as they scroll through that first page, again, it gives them a walk of all of our programs, who we are, what we're offering. And the goal of developing a student portal is that you want to ensure that you keep your students within the student portal. You don't want them coming out of the student portal as much as you can help it. So then they can move from visiting the student portal to submitting an application, because that's what we have here. So on the second page, we also took it upon ourselves to break down what are our admission steps. The goal is to keep it simple, help the students to understand that it is not a long drawn out college process, but that really within truly 4-6 steps, they're able to get into our program. And so from there, they're able to click on apply now. That then takes them into the application, which is the third screenshot that you see here, enrolling now. We took, again, the required fields that we need to formulate that application. And that application or that content, once the student completes their enrollment, then is integrated into Orban. Orban is our main computer system where all of our student records are as well stored, which then connects them to financial aid, connects to academics, and so much more. So the student portal for us is a bridge. It basically connects our student to our existing systems. But what's nice about the student portal is that you can literally send the link via text. You can email it to the student. You can put it on your website. You can decide on what that looks like. And I also want to give credit to Mohammed, our director of corporate development at our school. I remember when we were first designing it, it was really important for him also to ensure that the student could really understand what it was. So this went through a couple of different changes and modifications, but at the end we understood one thing, and that's that we needed to make sure that the content was strong, that we identified it as a student portal. As I had the opportunity to visit different student portals out there, I realized that many institutes don't put in the time in terms of imagery. They might not even label it a student portal. And so I wanted to make sure that the student, when visiting our portal, could really enjoy the experience, could be drawn in by the imagery. We also have a tab in there to really offer students an opportunity to refer their friends and help us build on that next generation of California Career Institute graduates. That's something else that we did deliberately. And then there's lastly a page in there for those students that are military. We were not doing a good job in letting the world know that, yes, we are VA approved. And so I made it a point to add that page onto the student portal that allows those students to learn about the benefits that we do have to offer, and also make it more inclusive so that they could see themselves attending our institute. So for me, the student portal has been really something innovative. I've had a lot of fun with it, but at the same same time, I've seen how much it's helped with improving our systems. The applications are coming in seamlessly. Students are able to get on there 24/7. It works for you overnight. So even if your staff is not there, students are able to complete an application and they're able to upload their documents like ID, Social Security, high school diploma, for example, which are requirements for us. And then we're able to make the connection with the enrollment into Orban. So again, it's been really a breakthrough for us.
Awesome. That's such a great example. Thank you so much. It's such a neat feature, and I love that you fully customized it and takes the student on the journey that you've created for them. So after determining that technology would be of value, your next step is to decide which solution is right for your institution. So Eddie, can you share with us your experience with evaluating CRMs and what made you choose Lead Squared as your technology partner?
Oh yeah, of course. You know, every CRM promises to be this magic wand of don't worry, it's going to be just fine. And one of the things that I am incredibly important on is the old adage, the proof is in the pudding. Show me it work. If you can't show me that it's actually working, if you can't give me a demonstration of what the automation actually looks like, and let me talk to a customer. That's my biggest thing. Let me talk to one of your customers. Let me talk to another DOA. Let me talk to another school owner. Let me actually talk to them and ask some questions that I'm not asking you. I don't necessarily trust a CRM that won't do that for me. We had a contract ready with Verity to go back in 2019. We had a contract. It was on the owner, David Weiss's desk. And my marketing director and I go running in there and we go, let us do one demo of this company called Lead Squared. And he looks up and for anyone that knows David Weiss, he's been in the industry over 25 years. He's huge. He goes, I've never heard of him. You got an hour and then I'm signing this document. And we got on the phone, we got a hold of Shub, and we're like, give us a demo, show us this work. And I am not an easy person to sell to. I'm really, really not. You know, like I said, I want to see it work. And he was able to show me things that I had never seen a CRM do before in the educational space. Like I said, I come from a health insurance field, from the healthcare field, and I know CRMs could do it, but nobody was utilizing that in the education field. And it just blew my mind that it wasn't there. And when I saw Lead Squared, I was like, oh my gosh, we have internal text messaging, we have all the call monitoring we want, we have all the data capture we want, we could include marketing sides with it. This is a really effective way of doing things that really kind of catapulted us to, hey, this is the way to go. I remember the conversation I had with David Weiss regarding it, and he actually told me, he goes, are you willing to bet your job that this is going to be the way to go? And I looked him square in the eye and I said, yeah, I do. I really think that this is the next step in the evolution of getting a hold of students. If you want to go to the next level, this is the way to go. And I know that it's scary for people to make changes. I know that you worry about your existing data and your existing bank of students and what's going to happen with all of that stuff. But I'll tell you, the integration process was fairly seamless. You know, it took us about 4 to 6 months to get fully integrated over with our old stuff, but we were calling new leads absolutely immediately, which was huge. And even throughout COVID, throughout staffing changes within Lead Squared, you know, they've never dropped the ball in reference to support and supporting us. And I know that we've been a really, really big advocate for them, and they've been a big advocate for us. And if you're thinking about it, don't hesitate. And if you want to reach out to someone directly, if you want to see what we do, like I said, I'll throw my email in the chat. I'd love to show you just kind of the way that we utilize it as well. I'd be happy to do that for anyone because it's amazing.
Thank you so much for that offer, Eddie. That's incredible. I do want to be cognizant of time. We have 2 minutes left in our webinar times, and I want to give both of you just a chance to provide some final thoughts or key takeaways. So as we wrap up, Maggie, could you just touch on, you know, the overall value of student journey mapping for California Career Institute, and then anything else you'd like to add as a final wrap up?
Sure. I just would like to go ahead and say thank you so much to Lead Square for the opportunity once more to be part of this webinar. It's been an extraordinary journey, and Eddie said it best, I think, earlier in the conversation. It's a partnership that is just ongoing. We have weekly calls with LSQ, and literally they are part of our team. We have some really great partners there. Violeta works with us, manages, oversees our account. And then we have forged some really excellent relationships with some of the software developers, engineers, and on the customer service end, like Ankit, Sana. And I think that it's important to also mention them because it's when we talk about LSQ, it's not just a software, it's not just a program, but it's the people behind LSQ that really help to make it come together, come alive. And they have been really instrumental in sometimes even helping us to think through solutions, thinking through better ways to speed up certain processes, do the automation, program it. And the difference for me is very clear. Like Eddie said, I as well had worked with Salesforce, but it comes with a really high sticker price. And so the more services, the more features you want, it doesn't always seem to be cost effective for many institutions. If it is, I think that's great for you. But now that I've come across LSQ, I see that it has all these different features integrated into the system. And I love the fact that you have like 40 developers, software engineers that are available working on your account day and night. So a lot of the heavy lifting is done by LSQ. And I think that that's my key takeaway. One of the benefits of working with you. And we too were working with Velocify, and it was the best decision ever that we made in moving to Lead Square.
Awesome. Well, we love working with you too. Eddie, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just would like to, of course, thank you and Lead Squared for the opportunity to do this, and for everybody that's dedicated an hour of their time. Trust me, I know how hard it is to get an hour away for a webinar like this, especially right in the middle of the day like that. Kind of a key takeaway, like I said, from this is don't be afraid to ask questions. I saw a really great thing that was in the chat, actually. I believe it was Melissa Soderberg. She actually said, is there a user conference where we could all learn best practices on how others are using Lead Squared and etc. The great thing I like to talk about this is Lead Squared is probably open source. And I know that's kind of a techie word to use, but what I mean by that is the more Lead Squared grows, I mean, I've been with it since its infancy, the more it can do. And like Maggie said, it's not costing additional thing for additional features. Some other CRMs are like, oh, you want this? That's an extra $1,000 a month. Oh, you want this? That's extra $750 a month. Like it's included with Lead Squared. And it's just amazing to see the growth. And when they come to us and they're like, hey, we got this new reporting system for you. It's called ACE. It's talking about the student journey. What can you do? Today I saw I saw Maggie's student portal, and the whole time she's talking about it, I was like, I want the student portal. So I have to get a hold of my account exec, which is Lauren, by the way, to get me a student portal, because that is so exciting. Because it's just, like I said, the next step. And the more people that are on it, the more like-minded, successful, positive affirmations that we have out there, the more successful Lead Squared is going to be.
Awesome. We'll get you hooked up with the portal, Eddie. No problem. All right. Thank you so much. A huge thank you to Maggie and Eddie for sharing their experiences and expertise. We will follow up with each one of you that have attended, and we hope to have the opportunity to discuss Lead Squared and the platform and give you a glimpse into our work a little more. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.